with how that works. This is now you can say, okay, in the last 12 hours or the last 24 hours, things like that that are easier. Some Q&A, Azure Maps. So Azure Maps is kind of coming along. They're trying to come out with, I think it probably used to be Bing Maps or something like that. So a new kind of map visual. If what is coming in Power BI out of the box hasn't cut it so far, you might check out the new Azure Maps visual. This is one I probably should have highlighted, is the Excel financial functions. I know we have several in our group who use Power BI to create P&Ls. Well, they basically took a lot of helpful Excel financial functions and baked them into DAX for Power BI. Things like the amortization functions and net NPVs and things that are pretty common in the finance world. Well, now they're built-in DAX functions, so you don't have to write out the formula yourself and figure out how to re-implement it. But the biggest one I would not want to miss is called external tools. This is a preview feature you have to turn on starting with the July update, but it's a really big deal that's coming if you do a lot of Power BI development. It's like they've opened up Power BI desktop to now you can reach, other tools can reach into Power BI's, especially data model, and edit that data model or enhance that data model, sometimes even creating features on top of it that you can't create in Power BI desktop yet. So it can really magnify your power for doing development in Power BI desktop. And I've already found it kind of taking away some of the friction points about adding columns and changing measures and having to wait for all the visuals to refresh every time that I'm updating the data model. This is really going to come up during Alex's talk when he talks about tabular editor, because that's going to be a really that's tabular editor is an external tool, and it's going to be a useful one if you do a lot of that. So in August, some neat features that came with this update: rectangular lasso select for data. So you've always been able to select the visuals, but now inside of a visual, you can actually do a lasso select and say, let me pick those 3 months in the middle of my line chart. Pretty cool. Q&A on direct query data sources. If you're using Q&A and you're using direct query, this is a really big deal for you. More dynamic formatting. So I kind of put a link here just to bring up that it is, probably can't see that, but they've added it to like the column chart, the bar chart, the scatter charts, the line charts. You have a lot more where you can use formulas when you're setting the formatting. So that's going to be really helpful if you've ever wanted to say, hey, I want, all those dots want to be green, but this dot I want to be red. You can get a lot more control with that kind of thing. And then this like text and CSV by example is a neat feature where when you're importing CSV files, you can say, hey, I want to just kind of show you what I want to transform this CSV file and see if it can figure out. Basically what it does, it'll try to figure out the right M code based on an example that you give it. So pretty neat in the Power BI desktop world. The Power BI service, if possible, got even more. And some of these actually happened, most of it happened in May and June. And so I just kind of spread it out to July just to make it fit. But they've GA'd the shared and certified data sets, as well as the sensitivity labeling for reports. If you use paginated reports, you can now create a page view. There was a report server update. Other just interesting things like GA of automatic page refresh. So you can, if you have a direct query source, you can turn your page on with a setting to say, I want you to automatically refresh this page every so often. Really nice feature. I was using like a Chrome plugin to hit the F5 button every so often. This is way better. Improved Snowflake connectivity. Other things to just really call out are these Power BI deployment pipelines. So if you manage a lot of Power BI content that goes through a life cycle of it's in sandbox kind of, then it's in development, then test, and then prod. The idea of these pipelines is that they can help manage that life cycle of your Power BI content. Really cool idea, still kind of new, but it's pretty good for your Power BI stuff. And one thing I have heard, it doesn't work very well on data flows yet, but hopefully that is coming. So frankly, that's one I need to play with a lot more. This is kind of a nice one. You finally have the option to block classic workspace creation. So this is more of an admin feature, But if you've ever logged into Power BI and seen a ton of workspaces, and a bunch of which you didn't even recognize because you're like, what, I never created this workspace. But what they really are is actually a huge list of your Office 365 groups that are tied to classic workspaces. Finally, they're making it where we can block the creation of those things. And I think maybe next month it will come out that finally admins can just hide that list of things that, hey, block all the old workspaces that really, we're going to use new workspaces now. So the experience will get a lot cleaner when that happens. If you're an admin, you'll be excited to see that. Like we mentioned, some updates to the mobile apps, better experience overall. And then in the embedded world, if you do Power BI embedded, there's React components now, like a Microsoft provided React Power BI component. There's also just lots of updates to their APIs and phased embedding. They're always making this experience better as the Power BI service changes. So does the embedded experience. So a lot of new features there. Definitely didn't even cover all of that, but what we try to do is have this YouTube playlist that you can subscribe to, and it's sort of a recommended watch. There's tons of great content out there, as always, a lot of it by Guy in the Cube, or a lot of it from Microsoft. The Power BI team themselves puts a lot of videos up there. So, but I try to flag the really good ones. So if you want to subscribe to this one too, I'll make sure it's up there.